Happy full moon in Taurus. Wow. So let's get into it a little bit. Every time we have a full moon, we have this opportunity to do what I actually really think is radical, like rebellious work these days, where we're trying to bring two polarities into relationship with one another in a positive way, in a celebratory way. So what's revealed when we play with these two archetypes? On the one hand, we have Taurus, where the moon is. And Taurus is sensual, ruled by Venus. It's all about the pleasures we experience between birth and death. Like food and good smells and a delicious hug. Now, Scorpio, on the other hand, absolutely still quite about pleasure, but in such a different way. And the archetype of Scorpio has way more to do with that space between death and rebirth than it does where Taurus rolls. So understandably, Scorpio is connected to the mystery, connected to the occult. So let's bring the occult together with the sensual of Taurus. In our bodies, we thank goodness we have sensation that we feel quite physically, but we also experience our feelings. We even experience our thoughts, and we can experience our I am. While, of course, in our physical body, the sensation, the Taurian thing is very the earthbound stuff. When we have the sensation of feelings, when we have thoughts and this I am, it's actually connected to much subtler bodies than our physical body. Now, hold this thought. So I want to bring us back to the big picture of Earth. When you come to get certain readings with me, I'll do this alchemical drawing. And part of why I do it is to remind us that, here we're living on Earth, but we're inside the sphere of the moon, which is inside the sphere of Mercury, which is inside the sphere of Venus, etc. And so all of the planets, they're not just like a spot in the sky, an object in the sky. They're actually in their orbits. They're going around and they're creating a whole realm or even dimension. So very similar to how in my own body I can say, okay, I've got the physical and then I've got these other layers, feelings, thoughts, etc. In the Earth herself, she is in the middle of these different spheres. And we experience, our thoughts and our feelings. I wonder how the Earth then experiences the different planets. So when we work with astrology, we start to understand that these different planets rule different things and have a relationship to us, not necessarily on the physical level like a pinball machine, but much more in these subtle ways, in these subtle, finer substances than just the gross material things. So bringing in the mysteries, part for us modern human being, it is the subtle bodies that are the mysteries. While we can we can cut up and measure our bodies. No, that's the wrong way to put it. But we can measure and quantify and all this stuff about our physical body. We even have much more relationship with like the body of our feelings. With our thoughts, it gets a little bit more challenging, but still, think about going to a psychologist and there's a lot of conversation around our thoughts and this sense of I. We work in these fields already in much different ways than merely physical. So how is it that now, as a modern human being, we have the mystery in this realm of the subtle bodies when it seems like in ancient times they had a different disposition? We hear that in ancient times people were clairvoyant. We hear that they had a different experience, that it used to be obvious to all human beings that we had a body, that we had a soul, and we have a spirit. Now, to me, I mean, I study this. I'm deeply immersed in esoteric and cosmology and exploring these ideas. So they're much more alive now. But modern day human beings, we can agree, most of us, that we have a body. But then it gets a little fuzzy, the soul. And we even know, the Catholic Church took spirit out of their vocabulary, and they just really talk about body and soul. Now, mind you, just because they took it out of the vocabulary doesn't mean that we don't have one anymore or that we've lost it somehow. But imagine ancient people actually being able to experience a knowing of that subtle realm that we can't know anymore. Now, why would we dismiss the gifts that they've left in their wake when they've told us about these things? They didn't use modern language, but they used more, what sounds to us like naive or old language. So let's remember to look at some of the symbolic language that is left to us. For instance, in the Bible, there are descriptions of the hierarchies. We dismiss them as a modern human being. Oh yeah, that was naive, that was silly. But what if it wasn't? We can imagine the earth in the middle of these different spheres. We understand that the human being is connected to subtle bodies. Isn't it perhaps very likely that these spheres around the earth and these subtle bodies we experience are the realms of the hierarchies that the Bible talks about? Just a contemplation of bringing the occult and the mysteries into our physical experience now. So happy full moon in Taurus, and so much love. Mwah.